Okay, welcome to Where and How to Get Help Month. I'm chatting with Nic Prendregaust from Clarity Kent. Nic, do you want to? Well, you're back. Firstly,
Yes, I'm back.
you kind of
Yes.
you left us for a while at the hub, and now you've come back to us, which is lovely. So, do you
Yeah,
want to tell us
no,
what we're
sort of
doing now? Why you're back?
I am back. Yes, I had a sort of temporary pause. I think it was about 6 months, or it might be longer, but yes, absolutely. I'm back. So I guess a little bit about me in context. I'm a therapist, also a coach, but I've been working in private practice now maybe for 5, 6 years, even longer. And I think before I get on to what I'm doing now is that and I think it'd be quite useful to women in this group as well, is that I have a strong corporate background. So I was in
Mhm.
HR for 23 years. So I made that sort of career transition. But yes, I'm back, Emily, and very much now in terms of therapy wise, my focus is very much working with midlife women that are going through perimenopause, menopause and beyond, but very much working with them and supporting around what I call, or fondly call, the psychological challenges of
Yes,
our perimenopause and menopause
and they
experience.
are many.
There are many, yes. And I always talk about it as the sort of menopause madness or
Mhm.
menopause craziness. But if you like, I box into that the stress, the anxiety we can feel that can be really quite high in those
Yeah,
menopause times, those feelings of overwhelm, the catastrophizing, the brain fog, but I think as well that sense of identity, that lack of confidence and self-esteem, that sense of purpose. Now, who am I? What do I want to do? What can I do? And I think it all plays into the mix. So I
yeah.
think, from personal experience as well, that feeling of having that sort of identity crisis.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, I
along.
think most people watching this will resonate with that in some capacity, won't they?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah.
And before I come along and talk about a little bit how I can support with sort of what I call cognitive and behavioral approaches, is that I wrap around that too. And my experience as a therapist is also recognizing trauma that
Yes.
can catch us up, if you like, sort of in midlife, because I think our 40s or late 30s, whenever we're having those perimenopause symptoms, our 40s and 50s can be incredibly busy times in our lives, probably even busier, and we're juggling so many balls, whether it's young children, teens, left home, leaving home, aging, sick parents, challenges with relationships. We're juggling so many balls, but
Yeah.
also, as I like to call it, we have that, not for every woman, but almost that tsunami of hormones that comes along too. And actually, as I like to call it, we start to feel our wheels wobble, or hopefully, but the wheels come off,
Yeah.
because we're finding that trauma is tripping us up, and the coping strategies that we had many a year, which, who knows, it could be drink, it could be alcohol, it could be exercise, it could be food, then those coping mechanisms no longer serve us, and it really kind of takes us off guard. So I very much work with that trauma as well, to understand
Yeah.
how we can process it, unpick it, just to understand why we're feeling so, uncomfortable,
And I
and
think it,
deregulated, emotionally deregulated,
yeah,
you know.
and I think it's worth probably highlighting that what what sort of passes as trauma for one person, someone else might think is insignificant,
Yeah,
and there is nothing. If it has caused you a problem, it is a trauma. It's
yeah,
there's nothing wrong with saying that.
yeah.
I don't know. I can't even think of something that people might write off as being nothing. But
Mm,
for some people, they seem very resilient and seem to be able to cope with endless things being
mm,
thrown at them. They may
mm,
not be, but that
yeah,
and other people seem to sort of crumble at the slightest thing. And
mm.
there's no shame in being somebody who seemingly crumbles at the slightest thing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It could be about grief. It could be about loss, losing someone, but we also talk about loss of relationships, loss of identity. It could be back to childhood, an experience there, or quite often it can be you know, relationships with people closest to us, where, you know, messages have kind of sowed seeds in our mind that then reflect on how we take those messages forward, you know, into our kind of our adulthood, you know. So yeah, it doesn't, you're absolutely right, it doesn't have to be a significant event. And often we say, oh, well, nothing really bad has happened to us, like we've not had an accident or lost anybody really close to us, but it can be quite, things we might seem as quite small and innocuous can build up over time.
Absolutely.
If we've not spoken about or processed.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can find it harder to cope with or harder to suppress those feelings and emotions attributed to whatever's happened, if we're experiencing that, if you like, that tsunami of hormones.
Yes, very much so.
As well.
I'm laughing because I know. So in terms of kind of where and how to start getting help, I wanted to sort of, this month's topic, I wanted us to look at how people start getting help, because actually it's taking that first step can be almost the hardest thing, really, can't it?
Yeah, and I think I think the big word is acceptance. To be able to kind of acknowledge and accept, and I hope, you know, in ladies listening to this, you know, what I'm saying is resonating, to say, yeah, actually I could do with some time, because I always talk about therapy being self-care time, to just press pause and say, you know what, I can relate to this is going on for me. And I like to talk about, you know, normalizing, you know, those kind of thoughts and feelings, and then particularly to work with ladies to address, you know, what can we do to support you, you know, cognitively and behaviorally with those overwhelming, you know, feelings of stress, anxiety, kind of, you know, overwhelm, because we may well and we will experiencing it as those estrogen levels are fluctuating, you know, too. So, you know, that's very much the support.
And are there any kind of there may not be, but are there any sort of little things that you can suggest that people can do on their own before they even muster up the courage to kind of properly seek help? Are there things, just little starting places that people can, you know, just maybe I don't know, maybe it's a mindfulness practice, or maybe whatever?
Yes, yeah. And I think recently I sort of trained in a sort of menopause CBT model. I think a big part of that has been, to your point, Emily, about lifestyle modification. So the big element of it is actually what we call restoring balance in our body. So what comes with lifestyle is, and I know you've got a huge amount of experts in the group that would talk and play to this, is looking at, you know, our diet, our nutrition, our exercise, breathing, breath work, meditation, you know, getting out in nature, walking, you know, this whole concept of, you know, forest bathing at the moment. I think now in psychiatry terms, it's talked about lifestyle medicine. So all those things that we can do to look after ourselves, which is very much about tapping into our parasympathetic nervous system, you know, and, you know, when we're in that sort of fight or flight around stress and anxiety, you know, the gas pedal goes on in terms of our sympathetic nervous system. Is what we can do to really, we call rest and digest, to play in, put the brake pedal on and do things to help calm down that autonomic nervous system of ours, and play into the parasympathetic, you know.
Yeah.
And these might be sort of small things, small wins that ladies in the group are doing already.
Excuse me. It's things like, and I sort of talk about this quite often, that just getting present. So just going out and noticing the world around you, seeing the colours, hearing birdsong or whatever, because we don't.
Yes, yeah. You know, and, you know, I think there's absolutely that, as you said, about grounding, but there's something about gratitude as well. I think we can always, quite often we can wake up with anxiety in these sort of perimenopause, you know, years, and my work can really kind of support with that. But I think just being mindful and grateful, you know, maybe at the end of the day, what's gone on, you know, throughout the day, what we're grateful for, that we may somewhat kind of overlook because we're rushing from one, you know, thing to another, and we've not sort of actually, metaphorically speaking, stood still to take notice, as you said, what's going on.
And this is something with gratitude that I think sometimes people find is a bit of a stumbling block. I think people sort of almost think, oh goodness, I've got to have big things to be grateful for.
Yeah.
You might be grateful that a colleague brought you a cup of tea. You might be grateful that you got home from work in time for your favorite soap opera. You might be grateful that it didn't rain when you were walking the dog. You know, it can be really tiny things, but
Yes.
it's a really nice practice to sort of help you find those positives. Even if you had a shocking day, there will always be some little moments of positivity in there.
Yeah. And I also, just to play to the gratitude, I'd also talk about what almost non-negotiable or non-negotiables we can build into our day. So that might be, you know, in the morning having a cup of coffee, you know, obviously when the weather's better, but maybe just, as you said, sitting outside and just listening, you know, to the, you know, the sights and sounds. It doesn't have to, it's small things that incrementally can kind of build up, that we're kind of looking forward to, but they're part of our day, they're part of our self-care package.
Yeah.
You know.
Yes. And it's those tiny things. It's getting the shower gel that you like the smell of. I mean, it sounds so simple.
Yes.
But it's all those little things that actually you're going to be doing every day anyway. Make them a pleasure for you. You know, I'm not talking about having to go out and buy, you know, extortionate things, but just don't just grab the first one you see. Actually think about which scent is the one you want your shower to smell of, you know, or your laundry to smell of, or whatever, you know. And all those things are just tiny little things that just lift you.
Yes, and then I think that's when you can build in this whole concept of habit stacking. It just becomes part of your day, to be mindful in the shower, and, you know, the water touching your skin and enjoying that, the fragrance of the shower gel, you know. And even to this day, you know, when I clean my teeth, I'll stand on one leg just to help with the balance as well, just sort of, you know. So we're habit stacking rather than, you know, forcing something into our, you know, because we know if we don't, it never gets.
Absolutely. We all
lead pleasure.
We all lead busy lives, and the more we can habit stack, the more we can bring in those positive things and make those little changes, but without suddenly needing to find an extra hour in the day.
Yes, yeah. And we can always be in that space, you know, oh well, I'll do this when, you know, or if, but we know. I always talk about, we end up almost shoulding all over ourselves. So I should do this, I should do that. And whenever we say that or try, invariably it will never, because we keep ourselves stuck. You know, so
no, that's a whole other one. Talking about the language we use for ourselves, that's a whole other thing.
But absolutely, the sort of psychological, you know, challenges which I think we may experience, sometimes we overlook, we can experience probably even more so than maybe some of the physical, you know, ones. It's to kind of support with that and give that space to say, I'm not alone in this feeling, and what can I do in terms of self-care to work with those feelings that tend to feel that they're, you know, running out of control at times.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nic.
Pleasure.